Animal Collective aren't the most predictable bunch out there, finding beauty in the oddest places and ending up with a pretty polarizing response no matter where they venture in their very diverse and colourful and freaky discography. It was only a matter of time before Co. swam back into the depths of ambient soundscaping again. They had toyed with ambient music in the past, and pretty damn well, might I add, considering the rainy day atmosphere of campfire songs, but Tangerine Reef is an album that quite literally takes it deeper than before by exploring the ocean and coral reefs for inspiration. And creatively speaking, I can't really fault that, because I love that concept. Surreal and loose is how I describe this one. There doesn't seem to be much of a progression or form to these tracks, and that is probably how it is best left if they wanted to just make us feel as if we were wallowing and waving our way through some of the most vibrant parts of our wonderful ocean. The parts of our wonderful ocean that don't involve plastic bags and clumsy oil spills. Accompanied by the visual movie for this album, you can actually fully understand the scope and inspiration that went into this album, as it does really feel as if you're swimming through coral reefs and running your fingers along anemones and occasionally fist bumping a crab. I want to fist bump a crab. By the time Buffalo Tomato with its helicoptering synthesizers starts to ripple into the music, I'm really convinced of where the album is set, and I really begin to feel like I'm floating in the oceanic abyss of this very here Tangerine Reef. And there's no lying that the little synthesizer melodies that fly about are really alluring and spellbinding as the calls and wails of the Animal Collective members echo in the background as if they're trying to communicate to you from the distance. It's quite an ingenious setup they have here. So yes, they have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful concept here, and for the half an hour they offer you, it is quite a gorgeous little aquatic-themed ambient record. Except it's not half an hour, is it? It's nearly 55 minutes. As much as they try, I don't really think Co. managed to keep my attention held for the amount of time they were hoping to. And while each little vignette is great on its own, especially the ominous and foreboding Airpipe that signals the fear of the unknown, or the sudden burst of actual wild upbeat rhythm that clinkers in on hip sponge, overall it should be expected that Tangerine Reef becomes pretty tiring really quickly. Ironic considering its very slow and unrushed pace. It is quite gorgeous as background music to the visual poem that Co. and Choral Morphologic have offered to you on YouTube, but I struggle to find incentive to return to it as an album because perhaps in hindsight, I find its atmosphere so indistinct. I mean, yeah, it's aquatic and all that, but by the end of it, I don't feel like I've had much of an experience as much as I've had, just a really lovely wait in the queue to buy a fish tank. Co.'s new album isn't bad at all. I mean, I'm not surprised NME hounded its ass, and I'm certainly not surprised that some listeners have felt underwhelmed, because I do too for the reason I've stated. Or maybe a few of them are just listeners whose only exposure to Co. before this was Peacebone and My Girls, I don't know. Tangerine Reef, while admirable in its concept, is a 5 out of 10 from me. That sounds harsh because I've had big praise for its concept. Well, I mean, that's just the concept, isn't it? I like to go for swims in the ocean too, but after a while it just becomes a bit cold and there's a little sandy grit in your hair.